There is a strange kind of wisdom that doesn't make sense at first. A wisdom that feels like a contradiction, a paradox, a tension between opposites that refuses to be solved, only embraced. It's the kind of truth that whispers, let go, but stay committed. Rest, but don't give up. Accept everything and still try to grow. At first your mind rebels. It wants clean answers, clear paths. It wants to know, do I fight or surrender? Do I wait or act? Do I speak or stay silent? But life, in its infinite depth, rarely fits into such neat categories. The most powerful truths are not found in either or, but in both, and you are allowed to feel tired and still believe in yourself. You are allowed to grieve and still be grateful. You are allowed to not know what's next and still walk forward. These aren't contradictions. These are the layers of being human, and perhaps the greatest mistake we make in life is thinking we have to fix the contradiction, when really we are meant to live inside it. Think about how nature works. The sun rises, only to set. Winter freezes, only to melt. The tide comes in, only to return to sea. It's not a mistake, it's a rhythm, a holy back and forth, a sacred swing between extremes. And your life, too, moves in rhythms you may not understand, but you are still part of the song. So if you are overthinking, stuck between options, lost in loops, pause, breathe, and consider this. Maybe you don't need to choose. Maybe the answer is both. Maybe the answer is both. Maybe the deeper wisdom is this, that two things can be true at the same time. That you can feel fear and still move forward. That you can feel doubt and still trust something deeper. This is not weakness. This is spiritual maturity. It is the courage to hold opposites in the same hands, to not run from tension but to sit with it, gently, patiently. You do not need to solve every feeling. You do not need to make sense of every thought. You do not need to fix yourself, because here is a secret. You are not broken. You are unfolding, like the petals of a flower, like the phases of the moon, like the rising and falling of your own breath. Every contradiction in you, every place where your heart is torn between letting go and holding on, is not something to be judged. It is something to be listened to, because within every contradiction is a doorway, a chance to expand, to grow beyond linear thinking, to step into a kind of clarity that can only be reached when logic surrenders and presence takes its place. So instead of asking, what is the right way? Ask, what is the true way for me right now? And sometimes the truest way is to rest without guilt, to wait without fear, to move without certainty. That is where real strength is born, not in always knowing but in always trusting. There comes a moment in life when the very thing you've been running from is the thing you're meant to sit with, not to change, not to fix, but simply to witness. You see, we've been taught that clarity comes from solving, that peace comes from control, that success comes from pushing harder. But what if clarity comes not from solving but from surrendering? What if peace is not found in control, but in trust? And what if the greatest power you have isn't in pushing forward, but in learning how to pause? You were not designed to live in a state of constant effort. You were not made to fight every thought, to win every battle inside your own mind. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to let the waves of your thoughts pass, without chasing any of them. Imagine this: you're sitting on a hilltop. The sky above is vast, endless. Clouds pass, some dark, some light. You don't need to name them. You don't need to change them. You don't need to stop the rain or summon the sun. You simply watch. And slowly, gently, you begin to realize you are not the clouds. You are the sky. That's what overthinking tries to make you forget. It convinces you that every thought must be important. Every worry must be analyzed. Every feeling must be controlled. But the mind is a storyteller, and not every story it tells is sacred. What is sacred is your stillness, your breath, your death, the ability to choose what you give attention to. So next time your mind starts spiraling, pause and whisper, I am not my thoughts. I am the space they pass through. And in that space you create the possibility for something new, not a different thought, but a different relationship with your thoughts. You move from identification to observation, from anxiety to awareness, from reacting to remembering. remembering that your soul has survived many storms, that your peace does not depend on perfect circumstances, that your breath right now is enough to come back to yourself. And what if that's the scripture you need to speak over your life? Not ancient words in a book, but sacred reminders whispered from your own soul. I am not behind. There is no race. This moment is not a mistake. Everything I need to grow is already inside me. These are not just affirmations, they are corrections, truths that realign your nervous system back to the truth of your being. Because anxiety often comes not from the moment itself, but from the story you tell about the moment. Your mind says, I should have done more, I'm running out of time, I need to fix this before I can rest. But your soul says, you are exactly where you need to be. You don't need to rush, you need to breathe. Nothing real can be lost. This is where the contradiction becomes holy, because you can still grow while fully accepting where you are. You can still evolve while loving who you've been. And that, perhaps, is the greatest contradiction of all. You are enough. And there's still more of you to become. Can you hold both? Can you allow the tension of that paradox to teach you, rather than shame you? Can you learn to live in the mystery, without needing every piece to make sense? Because the most meaningful things in life, love, healing, peace, trust, rarely arrive when everything is figured out. They arrive when you create space, when you stop trying to fix your emotions like broken machines, and instead learn to listen to them like sacred messengers, when you realize that overthinking is not solved by thinking more, but by coming back into your body, into your breath, into this present moment. And from here, from this still point between all your contradictions, you begin to hear the only voice that matters, not the voice of fear, not the voice of society, not the voice of comparison, but the voice that says you are already loved. You don't need to do more to be worthy. This breath is holy. This step, even if unsure, is enough, and that is the beginning of your return to peace, your return to truth. You'll return to you. The mind is a beautiful servant, but a dangerous master. It craves clarity, definition, and structure. It tries to make sense of everything in neat categories, good or bad, right or wrong, success or failure. But life doesn't obey such sharp boundaries. It dances in the gray. It thrives in the spaces in between. This is where the paradoxes begin to appear. You can be brave and still afraid. You can feel lost and still be on your way. You can fall apart and still be growing stronger. We've been conditioned to believe that clarity means perfection, that once we figure it all out, the chaos will stop. But real clarity isn't about having all the answers. It's about becoming intimate with the questions. Overthinking tries to protect you. It whispers that if you analyze every angle, predict every outcome, control every variable, maybe, just maybe, you'll avoid the pain. But pain is not the enemy. Pain is a messenger. Pain is a doorway. It opens you to deeper truths, not the kind you read in books, but the kind you feel in your bones when everything else falls away. Sometimes the mind will scream for control, for action, for a solution, and sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is to not react, but to witness, to pause, to observe, to breathe. There is immense wisdom in the stillness. It's where the noise of fear quiets down. It's where the heart begins to speak, and what it often says is not fix me, but feel me. Feel the ache, not as a problem but as a presence. Feel the confusion, not as a failure but as a field to explore. Feel the contradiction, not as a mistake but as a mirror. Because life isn't linear, it spirals, it loops, it revisits. The thoughts that haunt you are not a sign of brokenness, they're echoes of unprocessed truth. And the only way out is in. So let yourself enter the contradiction. That surrender is not passive, it's powerful. That you're not behind, you're exactly where your soul needs to be. That healing isn't a destination, it's a rhythm. Overthinking makes you believe you're late to your own life. It convinces you that others have it all figured out, while you're still stuck in uncertainty. But here's the secret. Everyone is walking through their own contradiction. Everyone is carrying invisible battles. The strongest people are not those who avoid overthinking. They are those who have learned to hold it with tenderness, to walk alongside it without letting it define them. So if your mind feels heavy, if your thoughts spiral endlessly, return to the breath. Return to the now. Return to the truth that lives not in logic but in presence. You don't have to escape your mind. You just have to stop believing everything it says. You are not the voice in your head. You are the awareness that hears it. And that awareness is limitless. When you stop trying to solve life and begin to experience it, everything shifts. Let the questions stay unanswered for a while. Let the uncertainty be your teacher. Let contradiction become your companion, not your enemy. Because only when you stop fighting what is, can you begin to feel what could be. There is a stillness that exists beneath the chaos, a silence, beneath the noise. You may not always feel it. You may forget it when your mind races and your heart aches, but it's there, like a calm river beneath the surface of a stormy sea. This stillness is not something you earn. It's something you remembered. It's the part of you that existed before the world taught you to be afraid, before you were told you had to prove your worth, before you began to mistake your thoughts for truth, and in moments of deep overthinking, when the mind becomes a maze of questions with no exit, that stillness calls you back. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, it whispers. It says, you are not your confusion, you are not your anxiety, you are not your fear. You are the one watching those experiences, and the watcher is always free. Here lies another contradiction. You gain peace not by fixing the storm, but by remembering the stillness beneath it. You don't overcome overthinking by thinking harder. You overcome it by becoming present. Presence is not just a nice idea, it is medicine. It is a returning to your body, to your breath, to this moment. The mind says, but what if? The breath says, just this. And when you come back to just this inhale, this exhale, this heartbeat, the weight begins to lift. The storm may still rage above you, but you've remembered the anchor within you. You are not lost in the storm. You are the anchor. This doesn't mean life won't hurt. It will. You will face heartbreak, loss, confusion, doubt, but pain is not the problem. It's your resistance to pain that creates suffering. And here we meet another paradox. The more you resist what you feel, the more power it has over you. But the moment you allow it fully, without judgment, it begins to transform. Not because you forced it, but because you held space for it. And this space, this radical, tender acceptance, is the beginning of freedom. It is the birth of healing, you see. Overthinking is not the disease. It's the symptom of an unattended truth. It's the echo of emotions you've been too afraid to feel. But you can feel them now. You're strong enough, you're ready, not to analyze them, not to fix them, but to witness them like a sacred guest arriving at your door. Say, I see you, fear. I hear you, doubt. I honor you, grief. And in that honoring, something opens. You become less afraid of your own mind. You stop treating your feelings like enemies. You begin to trust that every emotion, no matter how dark, is part of the unfolding. You begin to realize, this isn't a breakdown. It's a breakthrough. You're not falling apart. You're falling inward. And inward is where the truth has always lived. There is a kind of quiet strength that comes not from conquering the world, but from making peace with the parts of yourself you used to run from. This kind of strength isn't loud, it doesn't demand applause, it doesn't shout to be seen. It simply is steady, calm, rooted. We live in a culture that rewards performance. Be the best, get the most, move faster, achieve more, and if you're not producing, you're falling behind. But the soul doesn't care about speed. The soul moves in seasons, not seconds. And like the earth, it has its own cycles of blooming and resting, of becoming and being. There's wisdom in rest, there's power in stillness. But for many of us, stillness feels dangerous, like we'll lose ourselves if we stop moving. Because in stillness, the noise dies down. And underneath that noise, you hear the voices you've been avoiding. I'm not enough. I'm too late. I'll never be loved for who I really am. These voices aren't the truth, but they've become so loud, so constant, that we confuse them for reality. Overthinking feeds these voices. It loops them on repeat until you believe your worth is tied to how much you can fix, solve, improve. But healing is not about fixing yourself. It's about remembering you were never broken in the first place. Let that sink in for a moment. You are not a project to be completed. You are a mystery to be lived. And like all mysteries, you cannot be rushed. You cannot be solved. You must be felt. You are allowed to slow down. You are allowed to not have it all figured out. You are allowed to be both a masterpiece and a work in progress. This is the sacred contradiction. You can be enough and still desire growth. You can love yourself and still want to become more. These truths are not at war. They are dancing with each other, inviting you into a gentler way of being. Because here's what happens when you soften. You stop fighting your own reflection. You stop trying to hustle your way into worth. You begin to belong to yourself, and when you belong to yourself, the world no longer has the power to define you. You begin to speak differently, not from fear, but from grounded truth. You begin to walk differently, not in pursuit of approval, but in alignment with your soul. You begin to think differently, not in anxious loops, but in calm awareness. This shift doesn't happen all at once. It happens in micro of awareness, the pause before reacting, the breath before speaking, the choice to be kind to yourself when you stumble. And those micro moments, they shape everything. They are the soil where new roots form, where a new identity begins to grow, one not based on performance but on presence. There will be days when the old patterns return, when overthinking wraps itself around your mind like fog, when self-doubt creeps in through the back door of your thoughts. That's okay. Healing isn't linear, it's cyclical, it spirals. You will visit the same lessons over and over, but each time, from a new depth. And with every return, you're not back at the beginning, you're just revisiting familiar terrain with wiser eyes, a softer heart, a steadier breath. So, when you feel like you're backsliding, remember, progress isn't a straight line, it's a spiral staircase, and every step, even the ones that feel like regressions, are part of the rise. You're not here to be perfect. You're here to be real. You're not here to have all the answers. You're here to live the questions. Because the most powerful transformation doesn't come from force. It comes from gentleness, from sitting with your sadness instead of suppressing it, from honoring your anxiety instead of judging it, from whispering to your fears, I see you, you're trying to protect me, but I don't need protection, I need presence. This shift from protection to presence is everything. It changes how you show up in relationships, how you treat your body, how you move through the world, because presence allows you to respond instead of react, to listen instead of defend, to connect instead of control. And this, perhaps, is the most radical act in an overthinking world. To be here fully. Now. No fixing, no rushing, just being. You are not behind, you are not broken, you are not too late. You are exactly where you need to be to hear what your soul has been trying to say. And what it's saying is this: come home, not to who the world told you to be, but to who you've always been underneath the noise. There's a kind of awakening that doesn't arrive in fireworks or fanfare. It comes in the quiet, in the silence after the storm, in the breath you finally exhale, in the moment when you stop striving, stop fixing, and simply allow yourself to be. That's where the real shift, it happens. Not when you figure it all out, but when you finally stop trying to. So many people live their lives like a puzzle that must be solved, piece by piece, logic by logic. They spend decades chasing the final answer that will finally make everything feel enough. But life isn't a puzzle, it's a painting, and you're not here to solve it. You're here to experience it, even when it's messy, even when the colors don't make sense, even when you don't like the brushstrokes. You're not here to master the chaos, you're here to dance with it. You're not here to escape your imperfections. You're here to make peace with them, to see how even your cracks let the light in. This is the wisdom of the soul, to choose presence over perfection, to choose wholeness over performance, to choose love even when fear is louder, because fear will be loud. It will say, you're too late, you're too broken, you'll never get it right. But fear is a liar that shouts, and truth is a whisper. It says, you are enough, you are becoming, you are held. There's something sacred in remembering that you don't have to earn your worth, that even in your worst moments you are still worthy of love, still worthy of breath, still worthy of belonging, not because of what you've done, but because of who you are. And who you are is not your pain, not your trauma, not your mistakes, not your labels. Who you are is the one who has survived, the one who kept showing up, even when your hands were shaking, the one who kept breathing, even when your heart was breaking, the one who kept hoping, even when life gave you every reason to stop. That is strength. Not the kind the world applauds, but the kind the soul recognizes. And sometimes, strength looks like rest. Like letting yourself cry. Like asking for help. Like finally forgiving yourself for being human. The world will always push you to get over it, to stay strong, to move on. But healing asks something different. It asks you to slow down, to honor what hurts, to sit with what's real. To walk, not sprint, toward wholeness. Because you can't force a wound to close. You can only give it the space to breathe. And in that breath, that sacred pause, you'll remember something ancient within you, that you are not alone. That there is a wisdom deeper than your fear, a current stronger than your confusion, a grace wider than your shame. It's always been there, waiting, whispering. You just had to get quiet enough to hear it. And now, maybe you're ready. Ready to release the pressure, ready to stop proving, ready to stop performing, ready to finally come home to yourself, not the self you show the world, but the self that's been waiting in the silence, gentle, wise, unshaken. And when you meet that self again, you'll remember you were never lost, you just forgot where to look. So let this be your reminder. You don't need to have all the answers to take the next step. You don't need to silence every doubt before moving forward. You only need to be willing to trust, willing to try again, willing to believe even if it's just a little that you are not beyond hope. Because healing doesn't require perfection, it only requires presence, and you are here, now, alive, breathing. That is enough, that has always been enough. And if this message touched something in you, if even a single sentence gave you breath, clarity, or stillness, then pass it on. Someone out there is drowning in silence, and your share could be the whisper that saves them. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Not for the algorithm, but for the ripple. For the chance to carry this truth just a little further. For the soul who's still searching in the dark, waiting for someone to turn on the light. You could be that light. And if no one has told you lately, I'm proud of you for showing up, for staying, for choosing healing again and again. You are not alone. You are loved. You are enough.